Trump imposed tariffs. Markets trembled. Canada was backed into a corner. But while all eyes were fixed on Washington, Ottawa acted quietly behind the scenes. A series of emergency deals were signed. Countries once considered distant suddenly became saviors, and the world had no idea that Canada was secretly overhauling its entire global trade network. Does Canada no longer need the U.S.? These are the 10 countries that rescued the Canadian economy. This list might surprise you and may even force the U.S. to take a long, hard look in the mirror. Number 12. Australia, Canada's silent lifeline in Trump's trade war? When Washington suddenly slapped tariffs on steel, aluminum, and other strategic imports from Canada, Ottawa wasn't just facing a trade assault. It was pushed into geopolitical isolation at a time of global turbulence. Amid this gloomy picture, few noticed that Australia, a country tucked away in the southern hemisphere, emerged as a quiet but strategic lifeline for Canada. According to Professor John Rees of the University of British Columbia, Canada's relationship with Australia has opened up a strategic escape route amid today's global geopolitical chaos. Between 2018 and 2024, bilateral trade between the two nations surged by 30%, reaching $4.2 billion in 2024 alone. But this wasn't just about goods. It reflected a deeper strategy to restructure Canada's trade alliances. Canada began supplying Australia with key clean tech materials like lithium and rare earth elements, the golden resources powering the global energy transition. In return, Australia became Canada's gateway into the vast Asia-Pacific market. But it didn't stop there. Sharing the same language, legal systems, and democratic values, the two economies expanded cooperation into revolutionary sectors: green hydrogen, carbon capture, and sustainable agriculture. These industries are projected to be worth billions and are set to become new pillars of the global economy. Academia also played a role. Top universities in both countries signed a slew of dual-degree agreements, fostering a bilateral flow of talent and knowledge, creating a sustainable foundation for long-term partnership beyond trade. As the U.S. became increasingly unpredictable and risky, Australia offered Canada something it desperately needed: stability. And that stability, combined with long-term vision, allowed Canada not just to survive the economic shock from its southern neighbor, but to begin reshaping its role in the global trade landscape. Do you think Australia will become Canada's top trade partner in the Asia-Pacific in the next decade? Share your thoughts in the comments. Number 11. Vietnam, the strategic card that helped Canada break free from America's trade cage. When Canada was caught in the crossfire of Trump's aggressive tariff wave, many nations hesitated or turned away. But on the other side of the Pacific, one country, long seen as a symbol of emerging market potential, seized the moment and stepped in as an unexpected lifeline: Vietnam. Following both nations' entry into the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP, a dramatic shift unfolded. In just 5 years, Canadian exports to Vietnam skyrocketed by over 40%, surpassing $1.6 billion in 2024, a surge that stunned many trade analysts. The growth wasn't just due to trade deals. It was also driven by Vietnam's rapidly expanding middle class. Today's Vietnamese consumers have a growing appetite for premium imports: beef, lentils, dairy, and seafood from Canada, once considered luxury items, are now common in supermarkets from Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh City. But it's not just one-way traffic. Vietnamese tech giants have begun investing in renewable energy projects across Ontario and British Columbia, turning trade into a two-way street. Meanwhile, the number of Vietnamese students studying in Canada continues to grow, building strong cultural, educational, and human resource ties. Nguyen Thanh Huy, a Vietnamese international student in Toronto, shares, "I chose Canada because of its world-class education and its welcoming policies for international students. The growing Vietnamese community here also builds a real cultural and economic bridge between our two countries." As Vietnam pursues its strategy to reduce reliance on China, Canada has emerged as a stable, high-quality, and trustworthy partner. This isn't just a typical trade relationship. It's a strategic alliance, part of Canada's new pivot toward Asia, paving the way for a multipolar future beyond the shadow of the United States. Sources: Global Affairs. Canada. Canada-Vietnam. Bilateral Trade Report. 2024. CPTPP Impact Study. 2023. Do you think Vietnam's rising role as a key trade partner signals that Asia is replacing the U.S. in Ottawa's long-term economic strategy? Let us know in the comments. Number 10. South Korea. The high-tech ally that helped rescue Canada after the U.S. tariff shock. During Trump's administration, when the U.S. suddenly imposed heavy tariffs on key trade partners, Canada, long deeply integrated with the American market, was thrown into an unprecedented crisis. A $100 billion export system began to choke. While Ottawa scrambled and Europe hesitated, a quiet but highly strategic player from Asia stepped onto the trade battlefield: South Korea. As Canada's seventh largest trading partner, South Korea didn't sit on the sidelines. When Canadian goods were blocked from entering the U.S., Seoul took decisive action, significantly increasing imports of Canadian beef, lumber, premium seafood, and minerals, all areas where Canada excels. But the true game changer lies deeper in their relationship. South Korea is one of the world's leading hubs for electric vehicle and battery manufacturing. Meanwhile, Canada holds vast reserves of key raw materials like lithium, cobalt, and hydrogen, the lifeblood of clean energy technologies. One needs a stable supply chain, the other needs a high-tech market. Together, they form a perfect match in the global green transition strategy. A key advantage? Canada and South Korea already had a free trade agreement, FTA, in place since 2015. So when the crisis hit, there was no need for renegotiation. Canada could immediately activate this ready-made weapon to inject life into its struggling exports. Alongside trade, Canada gained access to South Korea's advanced R&D ecosystem, artificial intelligence platforms, and rapidly growing EV market. This wasn't just an economic rescue, it was a strategic leap, helping Canada gradually step out of the U.S.'s shadow and enter a post-carbon trade era with a trusted Asian partner. Source: Canada-Korea Free Trade Agreement, 10-Year Impact Report, 2015-2025. Canadian Ministry of Industry and Trade. Number 9. Japan. The golden link that helped Canada break into Asia. When Canada was thrown into a trade whirlwind by sudden tariffs from the White House, many feared the Maple Leaf Nation would have to face the storm alone, caught between the U.S. and China. But few expected that on the other side of the Pacific, a powerhouse known for its precision and discipline would quietly steady Canada's ship, Japan. No fanfare, no noise. Just like a Seiko watch, Japan offered Canada something invaluable: a stable, clear, and sustainable path forward. Soon after both countries joined the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP, a new shift in trade flows began. Canadian exports to Japan surged, not by trend, but by strategy. Japan became the top importer of Canadian goods among CPTPP members, surpassing even long-established partners. From beef, canola oil, and pork to frozen blueberries, Canadian agricultural products now dominate shelves in premium supermarkets across Tokyo, Osaka, and Kyoto. Japanese consumers favor Canadian goods for their quality, safety, and sustainability, values tightly associated with Canada's national brand. But this partnership didn't stop at food. Japan opened its doors in critical sectors like aerospace, electronics, and energy. Industries where Canada is pouring resources into both talent and strategic materials. As the U.S. grows more unpredictable and China more politically concerning, Japan offers what Canadian businesses are hungry for: a stable trading environment, transparent rules, and long-term commitment. While the world scrambles to rebuild supply chains, Japan is helping Canada achieve something even greater: reducing dependency and building a multi-pillar trade map, where Asia is no longer seen as a risk, but as a real, tangible opportunity. Number 8. China. The silent handshake that pulled Canada out of a trade trap. While the international media continued to dissect the diplomatic tensions between Ottawa and Beijing, a different story, quieter but far more consequential, was unfolding behind the scenes. The flow of trade between the two nations never slowed down. In fact, it accelerated. In 2024 alone, Canadian seafood exports to China tripled, surpassing $1.4 billion. A shocking figure given that the two countries had not fully thawed diplomatically. This points to a clear reality. Canada-China trade operates on a pragmatic foundation, one that transcends political disputes. According to the Asia-Pacific Foundation of Canada, despite the ups and downs of political ties, China remains the largest importer of Canadian seafood, a paradox grounded in realism. With over 1.4 billion people, China continues to demand resources, energy, and high-quality agricultural products, areas where Canada holds strong global competitiveness. In an increasingly uncertain world, Beijing views Canada as a stable and reliable supplier that can help ensure domestic security, especially in terms of food and energy. And it's not just about exports. Bilateral investment is thriving. Thousands of Chinese students have chosen Canada for their academic journeys, enriching the education sector and contributing significantly to foreign revenue. Meanwhile, Chinese companies are quietly investing in Canada's clean tech and renewable energy sectors, from hydroelectric plants to hydrogen R&D centers. Though rarely mentioned as a public savior, China plays a crucial, silent role in Canada's broader strategy of trade diversification. It's a relationship that avoids the spotlight, but is absolutely essential in helping Ottawa step out of America's shadow while maintaining global policy flexibility. Number 7. Mexico, the new launchpad that helped Canada stay strong in North America. When the seismic shock of U.S. tariffs shattered what were once considered the sturdiest pillars of North American trade, Canada had no choice but to pivot its strategy. As many doors slowly closed, a new path unexpectedly opened, not far away in Asia or Europe, but just across the southern border, Mexico. A partner once seen as a distant sibling suddenly became Canada's key to survival, recovery, and renewed influence in an unpredictable world. The year 2024 marked a turning point. Canadian exports to Mexico hit a historic high of $122.4 billion. This wasn't just growth, it was an explosion, particularly in strategic sectors like industrial machinery, aerospace components, and agricultural goods. As Mexican companies faced high U.S. import tariffs, they quickly turned to Canada, which offered both competitive pricing and world-class quality. But this isn't merely a trade story. It's a full-blown supply chain transformation across the region. The automotive and electronics industries, two of North America's economic pillars, are now being redesigned around tight integration between Canada and Mexico. From component manufacturing in Ontario to final assembly in Monterrey, the two economies are jointly mapping out a new regional value chain. This has been made even more feasible thanks to the USMCA, also known as QSMA, under which Mexico has emerged as a more stable partner compared to the U.S., especially as Ottawa-Washington relations show signs of strain. From regional partner to strategic bridge, Mexico has rapidly become a critical trade gateway, helping Canada not only maintain its foothold in North America, but also expand its reach confidently, without needing Washington's approval. It's a quiet strategy, but one with powerful results. Source: USMCA Regional Trade Report, NAFTA 2.0, Governments of Mexico and Canada. Number 6. The Philippines, the Pacific Bridge, powering Canada's economic expansion. While major powers compete fiercely for influence in Asia, Canada has taken a different path, quiet but sustainable. At the heart of this eastward pivot lies an unexpected yet crucial partner, the Philippines, an archipelagic nation positioned at the center of Southeast Asia. In just 2 years, bilateral trade between Canada and the Philippines surged by 35%, reaching $2.3 billion in 2024. An impressive figure given the relative size of the Philippine economy. But behind the numbers lies a multi-layered ecosystem of cooperation that spans education, clean energy, food, and migration. Thousands of Filipino students enroll in Canadian universities every year, building a robust cultural and human capital bridge. At the same time, Canadian companies are investing in renewable energy and infrastructure projects across the Philippines, a rapidly urbanizing market with a high demand for electricity and innovation. On the other side, the Philippines sees Canada as a reliable source of food and technology, from grains and dairy to agricultural engineering solutions tailored for tropical climates and sustainable development goals. More importantly, this relationship goes beyond economics. It's a strategic alliance. As the U.S. and China battle for dominance, Canada has quietly carved out a meaningful position in Southeast Asia through a friendly partner with a strong diaspora. The Philippines may lack Japan's grandeur or China's intensity, but it serves as a flexible, low-profile link that allows Canada to expand its regional influence without drawing too much attention. Number 5. Indonesia, the emerging gold mine, helping Canada escape the Western trap. In 2024, Canada reached a major milestone in its economic pivot strategy, the official signing of the Canada-Indonesia Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, CEPA. On the surface, it looked like just another trade deal, but beneath it lies a long-term strategy, unlocking access to one of the world's fastest-growing and most populous markets. Indonesia is no longer Asia's wild card. With over 270 million people, a rapidly expanding middle class, and projections to become the world's fourth-largest economy by 2045, this Southeast Asian giant is hungry for stable supplies of agricultural products, clean food, renewable energy, and education technology, all strengths that Canada excels in. Just months after the CPA agreement, Canadian goods began appearing in malls and commercial hubs across Jakarta, Bandung, and Surabaya. Wheat, fertilizer, beef, water filtration technology, and e-learning platforms from Canada are now steadily gaining market share in key Indonesian sectors. In return, Indonesia is not sitting idle. Major corporations have started pouring investments into Canada's renewable energy, clean tech, and higher education sectors, creating a rare two-way investment flow between the global north and south. As the Western world grapples with political instability and tariff wars, Canada's decision to align with Indonesia, ASEAN's leader in consumption growth and demographic youthfulness, is a smart geopolitical move. Not as brash as China, nor as complex as Japan, Indonesia is steadily becoming a new growth engine that allows Canada to reduce its dependence on the U.S. and tap into Asia with agility, confidence, and enormous potential. Number 4. Ecuador, a small piece unlocking South America for Canada. In January 2025, while the world remained fixated on the escalating global trade wars, Canada quietly made a move that few noticed, but one with considerable strategic weight. It signed its 16th Free Trade Agreement, FTA, with Ecuador. A country of just 18 million people, Ecuador nonetheless holds a crucial geographic position along the Pacific shipping lanes that link Asia with the western coast of the Americas. Ecuador may not be a massive market like China or India, but for Canada, it serves as the perfect testing ground. The country offers distinct advantages in agriculture, minerals, and renewable energy, three pillars that Canada is betting on in its push for a greener, more sustainable economy. From organic bananas and premium cacao to vast untapped geothermal reserves, Ecuador provides precisely the kind of resources that fit Canada's new trade playbook. In return, Ecuador stands to benefit from tariff-free access to Canadian hard-tech products, such as fertilizers, agricultural equipment, smart farming solutions, and clean energy technologies. These Canadian exports won't just serve Ecuador, they will ripple across its neighbors in the broader Andean region. This strategic side route allows Canada to avoid the overbearing influence of the U.S. while carving out a promising trade corridor in Latin America. Ecuador may be small in population, but it is a major strategic piece in Canada's global economic restructuring, quiet, flexible, and arriving at just the right moment. Number 3. Europe, Canada's strategic lifeline. Amid crisis. When Washington suddenly slapped tariffs on Canada's core exports, aluminum, steel, and agricultural goods, many believed Ottawa would be left scrambling with no time to react. But Canada had an ace up its sleeve. It didn't need to renegotiate a new deal. It simply reactivated an existing but underused trade weapon, the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, with the European Union. Within a short period, CETA was fully activated, and Canadian exports to Europe jumped over 25%, soaring into the tens of billions of dollars. No longer just a paper agreement, CETA became a real economic lifeline for Canada amid rising American protectionism. Seafood from the cold Atlantic waters of eastern Canada flooded wholesale markets in France and the Netherlands. Aerospace components and medical technologies from Ontario and Quebec appeared in industrial hubs like Frankfurt and Milan. Even small-scale Canadian agricultural and artisanal producers gained a foothold in notoriously selective markets like Sweden and Belgium. On the flip side, Europe didn't sit still either. Green tech firms, renewable energy giants, and educational institutions from across the EU began pouring investments into Canada, viewing it as the perfect launchpad into North America, without needing to rely on the U.S. More importantly, this wasn't just about commerce. Canada and the EU share core values: environmental sustainability, human rights, labor standards, and clean technology. This alignment has made Europe an ideal partner, helping Canada rebuild supply chains, expand global influence, and maintain its economic identity in a volatile world. Number 2. The United Kingdom, Canada's post-Brexit ally against the U.S. trade storm. While the United States erected trade barriers that left Canada reeling across the Atlantic, another nation, also in the midst of redefining itself post-global upheaval, unexpectedly emerged as a strategic support for Ottawa, the United Kingdom. After Brexit, the UK was no longer bound by the EU's common trade system and had to quickly rebuild its network of global trade partners. That's when Canada entered the picture. The UK-Canada Trade Continuity Agreement, UKCTA, initially signed to maintain uninterrupted trade after Brexit, suddenly became a vital leverage point as Canada's commercial ties with the US tightened. Since 2023, the flow of goods between Canada and the UK has accelerated. Seafood from Nova Scotia is now a regular item at upscale restaurants in London, while medical technology and mining equipment from Quebec and Alberta have found markets in cities like Manchester and Liverpool. In return, Canada has gained greater access to British financial innovations, tech patents, and banking services from London, resources the US is no longer as willing to share. What's more, shared legal systems, a common language, and aligned environmental and labor standards have made this partnership far smoother than others. At a time when the US is becoming an increasingly unpredictable partner, the UK, rebuilding its post-Brexit economic identity, has become a launchpad for Canada to preserve its trade independence and smartly expand its global influence. Number 1. Singapore, the quiet catalyst for Canada's power expansion in Asia. When the US unexpectedly imposed sweeping trade barriers, even on its closest allies, Canada had no choice but to redraw its entire foreign economic map. Among the countries Ottawa turned to for rebuilding its supply chains, Singapore, a tiny island nation with massive global connectivity, emerged as an irreplaceable strategic link. As a key member of the CPTPP and one of Asia's top financial and logistics hubs, Singapore offers Canada a distinct advantage, a gateway to the entire ASEAN market without direct conflict with volatile giants like China or India. From 2022 to 2024, Canadian exports of clean tech, pharmaceuticals, energy solutions, and medical equipment to Singapore grew rapidly, not just to meet local demand, but also thanks to Singapore's role as a regional distribution center. Premium Canadian agricultural goods, such as beef, grains, and seafood, are now winning over Singapore's wealthy, discerning consumers. On the flip side, Canada has actively welcomed investments from Singaporean tech and renewable energy funds into priority projects across Ontario and British Columbia. Academic collaboration between leading universities in both nations has also intensified, laying the groundwork for a new generation of entrepreneurs and leaders. As Washington grows more erratic and Asia cements its role as the global growth engine, Singapore is more than just a trade partner. It's the anchor that helps Canada transition into a truly global economy, finally stepping out of America's long shadow. Sources: World Bank Data, 2024. Canada's top Southeast Asian trading partners. Bloomberg Trade Flow Analysis, 2023. Canada doesn't need to declare independence from the United States. It's already walking away, quietly, step by step. While the world still sees Washington as the center of gravity, Ottawa has been silently shifting its axis. There were no headlines, no bold proclamations, just trade figures, contracts, and a long-laid strategy. Because sometimes true independence doesn't come from a statement, but from the ability to thrive even when others turn their backs on you. After watching Does Canada No Longer Need the US? These are the 12 countries that rescued the Canadian economy. Do you see any other countries making a similar quiet pivot like Canada? Leave a comment, because this global game is just getting started. This video is intended for analytical and educational purposes only. It does not represent any political stance or organization. Let's approach everything with an open mind and objective thinking.